Hi, this is Kathy Withers, and I'm going to talk to you very quickly this morning about spinning knotted yarns. First of all, what does a knotted yarn look like? In a previous episode, I showed you what a double knotted yarn looked like. This one here is what I call a knotted yarn. It has a knot in it that is created by spinning a single and then doing a certain technique with it, which gives you a lovely little knot that shows up as kind of like a crochet bullion, like I showed last week. So I have a variety of different ones. If they're not online, they will be this afternoon, that are going to be the type of thing that I spin. And I did have a pattern. Well, I actually do have the pattern. It's called the knotted collar pattern that you can find on my witherswool.etsy page. I sold the item, so I no longer have the item to show. But if you wanted to see what it looked like, it's on my Withers Wool page. But I went ahead and did up a little sample in both knit and crochet to give you an idea of how they'll look. How far apart you space your bullions is going to make a huge difference in what it ends up looking like. So this is a crocheted circle. I did a round of double crochet, and then I did another row of double crochet, and you can see that the pieces actually stick out somewhat. But this is the back side of what I was crocheting. What was facing me was this side. So something to know, and it applies to almost all of the art yarns, is that if you're creating something that uses knots or lamb's tails or pieces that are not throughout the entire thread, like a super coil, for example, when you're crocheting, the bigger, bulkier pieces tend to stay on the back side. So you need to think in terms when you're designing of turning it inside out. If you go somewhere more traditional, you could put this side out and nobody would think twice about it. If you go somewhere and you want to let your sophistication shine, you show this side. When you're knitting, you can force the bullions to be whichever side you want them to be. So for example, this piece right here, they're actually not bullions, I should say knots, because that's actually what they are. They look like bullions. Well, they show up randomly. When I spin them approximately, they're probably anywhere from 12 to 18 inches apart. They usually fall right in between, but I'm not a machine, so they're going to vary somewhat. So you'll notice that they're scattered somewhat throughout the piece. The narrower the piece that you have cast on, the more spaced out they're going to be in terms of length. As it stands right now, this is what they would look like. If you were crocheting something, and you were crocheting a scarf in the round, well, half of these would end up on one side because that's the back side. The other half would end up on the other side. When you're knitting, if you had any that fell on the back side, for example, this one kind of did, all you do is shove it through and it ends up staying on the side that you want it to, as long as your needle isn't too big. If you want something that drapes nicely, you're going to think in terms of a size 10 or larger needle because you want it to drape. This one, I used a size 11 because the yarn is a lot bulkier. It's a Shetland rather than a merino and kid mohair. And the tendency is for those fibers, once they're washed, to actually full out more. And I always set the twist on my fiber, so that's what happens. So now I'm going to give you a quick demo on how to do it. All right, you can't see it, but on the floor underneath the tripod, I have my little gem spinning wheel with a single already spun. I didn't want you to have to sit and watch me spin a single. That's kind of foolish. On my other side, and it's the left side, you want them on two opposite sides in order to get the best effect. I have a mercerized cotton. This mercerized cotton is a size 10-2. It's an average thickness, and I found it to be the most suitable for most of the art yarns that I do because it doesn't add a lot of weight or bulk to it. And if you want a heavier yarn, you would use a 5-2. And if you wanted to wrap something, you could use a 22. I almost exclusively use a 10-2 because years ago when I started out doing art yarns, you know, that if you bought so many cones of it, you got a huge discount. And I think the price of the stuff has increased by at least 30 to, if not 50%. So it was a smart thing I did way back then. Of course, I thought it was awfully expensive then. Now I dread the thought of running out of anything. And if you want to know what colors are probably the most popular, shades of blue, black, and brown. You would think white is, but white is not very popular. And it looks terrible under anything that's not white. So, you know, don't think of white as your main color. In fact, if you're spinning any kind of yarn and you wanted to add another yarn to it, or cotton thread, always think in terms of going for something darker than what you actually spun the yarn as. And it's because it's going to settle in the background, whereas if it's something brighter, it's going to catch all the attention and it's actually going to make your yarn look not so nice. All right, so now I've tucked my yarn in through my leader thread so it stays attached, and I'm going to treadle in the clockwise position, and I always have to spin a minute or two, you know, just kind of adjusting it. Now, when I spin, I always have a first portion that is basically kind of plied, but not quite. It's got more of the twist showing in it. And the reason I do that is because when you get ready to cast on or you get ready to make your first chain, you want something that's fairly easy to wrap around your needle to get it to go. All right, so now I'm going to actually do a knot, and this is how I go. I count 1, 2, 3, 4. I shove it up or slide it up in a more appropriate manner. Okay, till it's about 1 inch long. Depending on the thickness in which you spun your yarn, if you spun a much thicker yarn, you'd have a much poofier piece, okay? Then I'm going to take the yarn that's in my right hand, and it's the yarn, it's not the cotton thread, and I'm gonna wrap it up over the entire piece, let it twist around, and I'm going to bring it back. And so you'll see that on the back side of it, you got this nice little cross thing, and that's what locks the knot in place, and that's why it's called a knotted yarn. So another one, so 1, 2, 3, 4, slide it up, wrap it around, and bring it back down. And you always want to make sure it's locked there, because if you don't, when you take it off, your little half-hitch twist on the back side will come undone, and you'll have a sloppy looking coil with another piece just kind of hanging. And you know, those are yarns I end up doing something with because I know how to fake it. But if you don't know how to fake it, better to do it right the first time. And if you're going to sell it, you certainly want to get it right the first time. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, slide it up, slide it around and back. And if you think this is time consuming, it is. Now I'm going to do it in full motion. 1, 2, 3, 4. My feet are still going. Oops, forgot to push it. Push up, wrap around, pull back. And so when you make your initial single, you really want to think in terms of making sure you have enough twist in there, because otherwise your knot will not stay in place. And I quit counting because I always feel like I'm stupid when I count, but you can place these closer together. It will obviously use up yarn faster. You can put them further apart, and it really depends on the project. I kind of say start out with about 12 apart, because that gives you a good idea, or 12 inches apart, which for me equates to 4. So while I'm picking this trash out here, I don't leave it in. Up, around, and back. This is going to be a very short video today. I did want to mention that I'm going to spend this afternoon making a YouTube video covering some of my shop things, so that those who've never been out get an opportunity to see it. And I will be doing the Shenandoah Valley Fiber Festival this weekend. And you can find us on eventini.com. You can go through Withers Wool, click on any of the links that I have there, and use those. And I have shop hours this weekend that'll basically coincide with the Shenandoah. So I'll be here Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But don't come before 11 o'clock, because I'm not a morning person, and I tend not to get a lot done real early. I'm a caffeine freak. So if you have questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Next week, I'll probably be talking to you about my rainbow corn yarns, because I have 2 sets completed, and I have picked out a whole bunch of rovings that I plan to use for the next few batches. Being in quarantine, it's a little bit difficult to stay focused, so I'm trying to use colorways as an attempt to actually get something done, because I have ADD and I am now jumping from thing to thing, and there's no rhyme or reason to my life. So in order to be somewhat focused, I've decided I'm going to work through a batch as a project runway kind of challenge and see what I can do. So this is Withers Wool. I'm Kathy, and you can find me on Etsy, Instagram, and Facebook. I hope you enjoyed watching. Goodbye.